Hello and welcome to Understanding Narcissists. Thank you so much for joining me. In this episode, I want to go into something that I touched upon, or at least mentioned in a previous video, a recent video, where I said that narcissists aren't really attached to anything in a sentimental way. While that is true, it has a context and boundary to it. I don't think I overlooked the fact that it's not entirely true. I think that I didn't see it as being relevant in the context that I was talking about, but you and some others brought it to my attention that that is not true in every single instance or case. Because you and I both know that narcissists are very, shall I say, occupied with certain things or past events, especially, or people, and that is entirely relevant to the sentimental question. Narcissists do care deeply about a number of things. In particular, what happened to them in their past. I don't want to say entirely what happened to them in their past, but mostly from what I can tell, there are certain issues, certain things, little tells that indicate how obsessed they are with details of their life, details from their past. Now, this is kind of a funny topic because, on the one hand, I think to myself, or I say that it's so personal and individual to them that I couldn't possibly cover it in any great detail. But then, on the other hand, I think, but it's exactly the same among all narcissists that I've ever seen. Of course, that's just anecdotal, and what people tell me, too. Purely anecdotal, for the most part. And it's again one of those things where I have not seen the exception to it, where their scars or old wounds lie, the stuff that they can't leave alone and stop talking about. Usually something to do with their upbringing or their past or something that happened to them when they were little. The unusual thing about this event or person or thing in their past is the way that they characterize it, just like anything else. There is a stroke of denial to it, because whatever it is, they can't handle it, but it affected them and continues to affect them to this day. So remember, because this sounds like a logical exercise, it's really not, but because narcissists are so conflicted and there's inherent denial within them, the whole problem is them being unable to deal with what's wrong with them and what happened to them. When you get to the root of the issues, naturally, they don't know what they are. They don't know what you're talking about. They don't understand how they really feel. Now, I'm not telling them how they feel. I just want to make that clear. That's not my intention. That's not what I am trying to do. And hopefully that's not what I'm doing. However, it is clear that they are mixed up and are not fully in touch, if I could say that, with how they feel about this thing, person, event, whatever. It's usually pretty clear that it was traumatic. It's very clear that it bothers them to this day. However, they won't interpret it as such. They will have a handle on it in a different way. Because when they have a problem with something, it has to be a legitimate concern or problem with what's going on. They do not see it as sufficient as simply that, well, that didn't make me feel very good about myself. That doesn't really matter to them because it's speculative. And if they started saying that, it would become very easy for you to say that. And that's not good. They don't want that to happen. They don't want the feelings being brought to bear They don't want that to occur. That is a bad thing for them. And they recognize that. They need to kind of hide behind their veil, their scheme, their game. They got to keep playing that. That's the best thing that they have going on for them. So you can see how however they communicate or signal what bothers them, or this thing that that they're really hung up on, the way it sort of trickles out is special to them. It's going to be very characteristic of them. And so since you know them and I don't, the particular narcissist in question, you will be able to interpret that more readily and more ably than I am able to. It will be really a even more strongly emphasized pattern than what you already see them doing day to day. When you get to the core issue at hand, like what's really wrong with them, when it begins to, like I said, trickle out, things become more exaggerated. Things become stronger and more overtly narcissistic. You're getting closer to the conflict. You're getting closer to the source. And that becomes increasingly apparent as you delve really further into their problems. Things become really accentuated and dramatic. You see all the things I talk about in sort of too often, a roundabout way, sort of separate and distinguish themselves, and you see all the different elements for what they are and how they work together, as opposed to when it's just basically this really foggy, mystical, muddy and fuzzy type thing that they are day to day. They're in their element. They're able to conceal things. Things are working in a way as to be successful in their narcissism. When you take that away from them, when you start looking at things for what they are and for who they are, then it starts to become apparent the issues at work, the conflicts, what's going on inside. And that's where the hang-ups, the things that they can't let go, the things that they still talk about, their sibling, their parents, something that happened to them, usually when they're little. I won't say it's always like that, but it's usually when they're pretty darn young. And that would make sense if narcissism is something that comes about at a very early age, which is what I think it does. I think it does come about at a very, very young, formative age. It fits a pattern, a sequential pattern, almost like a serial pattern. Things happening again and again throughout the years, no matter how old they get, where they're living, what their life situation is. They're going to be hung up on that stuff. It's going to be a constant to some extent. I'm not saying they'll talk about it all the time, but when they do, they go at it. And they really talk about it. Well, it bothers them. Why does it bother them? Why is it such a big deal? Because sometimes it's something that is very mundane. Something that you would not remember, something that would not bother you, but it's one of those things that fits. It's like an interface, a receptacle of some kind where it just fits and it really affects them. Everything comes together and it really leaves this lasting impression and really damage. I see it as a wound that won't heal. But I also don't want to give you the impression that you can heal it somehow. I don't want to go that far because that's a little too hopeful, unfortunately. I wish it wasn't. I wish you could do something like that, but I don't think you can. That does not seem to be the case, at least as of yet. But getting back to the sequential pattern, you have to kind of trace it back. I'm not saying that they have to be necessarily little when this thing happened. But the way they refer to it is in a little way, an infantile way. You see the infantile relationship with the world and the people around them in this memory, or in this thing that they're concerned about, the stuff that they really do care about. They're not gonna label it as dysfunction as such. Again, that makes sense because narcissists just don't handle things. They don't go after stuff. They don't think about it that way. But for whatever reason, at this moment, you're able to see just to some degree what bothers them. They're talking about it, and that's unusual, but it's happening. And so that further indicates something, that this is indeed a different thing that's going on. What's its significance? I'm not entirely sure. I'm not saying that it's the one thing that made them a narcissist, but it's definitely something that they cannot let go of, and that alone makes it important because they seem to be able to let go of everything else, or a lot of other things. And so that certainly differentiates this particular memory or hang-up or obsession of theirs. And so even though they'll continue to mention it throughout their lives in this infantile way, it won't change. It'll be the same. It retains the same form again and again. And then so you have to naturally trace it back to when it actually happened and what's going on, because they can kind of relive it too. The one I see the most is interactions with their siblings, who are not narcissistic, but they definitely have a problem with, because their siblings are a cornerstone of the illusion. So everything they do, their family, the people nearest to them when the illusion was formed and all of that, it's going to be the family. Those are the things usually that bother them the most. The ones that are involved at the core of that illusion in their own identity and self-image and everything. And if they're not doing what they're supposed to do, the narcissist gets upset. Even when they're not around them, even when they have nothing to do with them. There's that connection. And that's probably the most common example I can think of. That's what they're going to be hung up on. Just like us. I mean, there's stuff we get hung up on. But not quite as narrow, not quite as restricted, or at least I like to think. Anyway, I hope you like this video. Like it if you do. Share it with somebody you think might benefit from it. Please tell me about your experience with this topic. If this has ever happened to you, what narcissists you know and what they're hung up on. Tell everyone about it in the comments section if you like, because I know people benefit from it. I know I certainly do. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next episode, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.